Okay, so I don't have any other players here, but I'm going to demonstrate how you play the game and how you take a turn, right? So first off, everyone should start the game with a starter deck of 10 cards, right? That comprises of 3 times vulnerability and 7 times punch. This is the same for all the DC Comics games as well as Street Fighter, but some installments will have slightly different rules for starters, such as Lord of the Rings or, it's not really different rules, but different equivalents of the cards, right? Such as Cartoon Network or Rick and Morty. So shuffle these up. If you don't have card sleeves, do not shuffle the way like this. Refer to the shuffling segment if you are not sure how to take care of the cards. Let me just see where I can put the deck in the frame. Okay, that's pretty good. Right, you'll shuffle the deck and draw 5 cards, right? So there are only a few possibilities for the first couple of turns, right? But this is what I got, right? So we got 4 punch. When it's your turn, you can play the cards in your hand in any order that you like, right? Usually when I draw a hand, I'll get the cards and I'll reorder them as I see fit. So the vulnerability has no effect, right? No play effect. So it's just an empty, worthless card that is, wasting space. If I had no vulnerabilities and just punches, then it would be guaranteed to have +5 power, right? So each punch gives you +1 power, right? So I'll play punch, 4 of them, right? So I have a total of 4 power, right? So I look at the lineup.
I reread the original manual, and it does not say this exactly, but many of the games refer to power as a currency. And one way to look at the lineup is a list of options that you are shopping for using the power, right? With the price being the cost in the silver coin. Keep in mind that your power resets to 0 after every turn, regardless of if you've used it all or not.
You're allowed to buy, as long as you have power, you're allowed to buy cards. So the number in the lower right-hand corner of a card is its cost. As you can see, the starter cards cost 0, as do the weakness cards, right? So the junk cards are all 0. That sometimes they're not officially called junk, but that's what I refer to them as. With 4 power, I have the opportunity to get 1 kick, one of either of these cards because they cost 3, this 1 card that costs 4, or both of these cards that cost 2. I'll go ahead and get the 2s. Right, so when you buy or gain cards, they go into your discard pile, right? Keep an eye on your deck and your discard pile because they'll be, changing rapidly. So when you end your turn, you have to discard all the cards that you played and all the cards that you didn't play that are still in your hand. Oops, I knocked that out of your frame. Don't want to knock that over. Move this aside then. Right, then you draw 5 cards, unless, something tells you to draw more or less. And in between turns, the lineup gets refilled back up to 5 cards. Again, unless there's more than 5 cards already. Okay, so this turn, all right. So an equipment appeared, right? Batman's superhero ability says +1 power for each equipment you play during your turn. So it would be a wise investment for me to play 3 punch and get nth metal. Again, there are no other players right now. This is just for demonstrative purposes. So I'll go ahead and end my turn. And now I need to draw 5 cards, but there's no deck left. So we're going to reshuffle. You don't reshuffle as soon as you have no deck. You reshuffle as soon as you need to interact with the deck. As in draw a card, look at a card, reveal a card, discard the top card of your deck, look at the bottom card of your deck. That's a thing, right? Although if you have no deck and something tells you to put a card on top of your deck, then that'll just be the entirety of the deck right there. Same with the bottom, right? But it's time to draw 5 more cards, so I have to reshuffle and draw 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keep missing. Okay, so see, yeah, we got a kind of a sad turn. Let's say hypothetically that another player had bought Kid Flash, so this would actually be the lineup on my turn. Now I can do nothing, right? So I'm just gonna pass. It doesn't matter if you play the cards or not; they're gonna all get discarded. But you can see why, you can kind of see how. Oh, okay. So now we have a hand that is all useful. Let's just ignore that. So this is gonna look more or less the same. I'm gonna play nth metal I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. I'm sorry. It says +1 power and look at the top card of your deck. You may destroy it. So I'm going to look at it, right? Now, when it says look, that means you're not supposed to show everyone else, right? Sometimes they say reveal the top card. This one says look at. So we're going to look at it. It's Catwoman. I don't want to destroy that because that's actually worth something. That's actually valuable, or at least it's not the best, but it's still better than a 1 or a 0. Oh, plus it's worth victory points. I completely forgot to mention that. The anatomy of a card, right? The big number in the silver coin, that's the cost, right? This bar in the middle shows the type, right? The white text box, or black in the case of supervillains, is the game text. So that's what happens when you play the card. Of course, you got the name at the top, a logo that indicates what it's from. Most of them mostly DC Comics. In the corner here, this number in stars, that's the victory point value, right? So the starter cards all have a VP of 0. Can I get the camera to focus? I guess not. However, you'll notice that the cards in the lineup typically have a VP of at least 1. And the supervillain cards typically have a VP that is much greater than 1. In this case, it's 4. I don't know if it comes up with that. Can I get like closer, farther, whatever. Right. Weaknesses have a VP value of -1. Right. They lower. Not only are they're essentially vulnerabilities, except they lower your score. And the kick, even though it's a basic card that's available off to the side, is also worth 1 VP. And sometimes you'll get a card that has a variable in place of its VP, such as Suicide Squad or Utility Belt. With these cards, with these cards, you need to read the description to let you know what it's worth. So in the case of Utility Belt, as with Green Arrow, it says at the end of the game, if you have 4 or more other equipment in your deck, this card is worth 5 VPs. Green Arrow would say heroes. So in the case of Utility Belt, it's worthless on its own. And in the only way to make it worth VP, at which point it would be worth 5, which is more than some supervillains, you would need to make sure that you pick up additional equipment in the deck. In the case of Suicide Squad, this is worth something on its own. It says this card is worth 1 VP for each Suicide Squad in your deck. So you would want multiple of this card, and then each one will be worth even more the more you get it. But on its own, it's worth just 1, which is still more than Utility Belt on its own. But I digress. Now we play Nth Metal. It's an equipment, so Batman's ability activates. It says +1 power for each equipment, so I'm at 2 power. 1 from the card itself, 1 from the ability, and we play 4 more punch to make it 6. So once again, we have a choice. Do I want to just get this 5? Do I want to get 2 3s? It could be 2 kicks. It could be Nth Metal, which is probably a wise idea. And perhaps Poison Ivy. Now, she has an attack, right? Now, attacks are, right, so it says attack with a colon in bold. Now, what that does is when you play this card, you are attacking all the other players. It'll say foe for short, but that means the other players. And you're attempting to weaken your rivals so that they, to either lower their score directly with weaknesses or indirectly by knocking good cards out of their hand or out of their deck. To counteract, I'm going to flip through some cards. We'll set them on the side. Hold on. Here we go. To counteract an attack, you can use a defense, right? So super speed is an example of defense. Now notice how it says draw a card before the defense. That's if you were to play it during your turn. But if it's in your hand and someone else attacks, right? Or if a supervillain attacks, right? The first time most supervillains appear, they have what's called a first appearance attack, which is essentially like a computer player attacking all the human players. But yeah, when you get attacked and you have a defense in your hand, or in the appropriate spot, right? Later defenses are ongoing, so they'll be on the table rather than in your hand, so everyone knows that you have the opportunity to defend. But if you have a defense in your hand, typically it says you may discard this card to avoid an attack. If you do, draw 2 cards, right? As opposed to just the 1 from playing it. I'm going out of order here, obviously. Yeah, defenses are good to have to protect yourself from opponent attacks and the supervillain attacks. Now, the way supervillains work is they're sort of like the main target of the game, right? Or an equivalent, right? So in the Forever Evil deck, which sees characters playing as, large supervillain cards as opposed to large superhero cards, but then they fight high-value superhero cards instead of high-value supervillain. See, the trick is there are a handful of supervillains, right? And they're the main target because typically they're the most valuable cards, and some of their play effects are the strongest. Not always, right? There are exceptions, and and various combinations of cards that may be more or less valuable depending on the timing. But the aim is to try and take down as many supervillains as you can. To actually win the game, you need to end with the most victory points. So you don't necessarily have to have the most supervillains if you have a lot of high-value cards, such as Utility Belt, assuming you fulfill its condition by the end of the game. Or many Suicide Squads. It's also a good way to come out on top. Or an equivalent, such as Agents of Shadaloo. So you want to end the game with the most victory points out of all the players. The game ends if either this stack or the main deck run out. Specifically, so let's just assume the main deck is all eaten up, right? Specifically, if the main deck, if in between turns you go to add cards to the lineup and there are less than 5 remaining, the game will terminate, and then you have to calculate your scores. Or if in between turns, no more supervillains, right? Or if in between turns the last supervillain gets taken, then before the next player's turn, the game will also terminate. Make sense? Now again, the order you play your cards in is up to you. You're not forced to play all of your cards right away, and then just have what luck it may be. You can hang out. As you're playing cards, you can hold on to some, right? So your opponent might be wondering if this is just a junk card that's not going to help you, or if you have another trick up your sleeve. So let's say we have Aquaman here. His ability: you may put any cards with cost 5 or less you buy or gain during your turn on top of your deck. So let's say in this hypothetical turn, I play 4 Punch, and I buy Supergirl, but I want to put her on top of the deck using his ability. Instead of playing all my cards and then having this turn, which is not that bad. With 5, we could get Utility Belt or Fastest Man Alive or Kick and Harley Quinn, or Mara and Harley Quinn, probably even better. But let's say we went ahead and we got Supergirl, put her on top of the deck, then we played Kid Flash. I'm going to set these cards aside. That's not an official thing, that's just my thing. Set those cards aside because I used up the power represented on them. It doesn't always work evenly, but usually it does. And then I draw a card, which happened to be Supergirl. She says, put a kick from the kick stack into your hand. So I will just go ahead and do that, and then I play that. Now I have 2 power, right? So it was 6 for the whole turn, but I already used up 4. Now I'm at 2, and then I would go ahead and get Harley Quinn. Maybe put her on top of the deck, maybe not, because she's not that strong, and her attack is not particularly punishing, but at least she's worth 1 victory point, as are most of the other cards. And then I would end my turn discarding all the cards that I played, and there were none left in my hand, but there you have it. Okay. Now, let's look at another type of card. A Destroyer. This is not an official, that's not the official name of this kind of card, right? It's not a card type, it's not a particular function, right? No other card hunts for this. But this is a typical function of the game. Card destruction is, it can go 2 ways. In a positive sense, you get rid of junk cards, right? They go to a destroyed pile, right? Which is just some spot off to the side of the main play area. I use a plastic box or bucket to hold them typically, and they're still in the game, but no one can reach them unless you have certain cards from certain expansions, such as Signature Trenchcoat from Crisis 1, or cards that reference the destroyed pile, such as like Superwoman in Forever Evil, right? We'll check the destroyed pile for villains. But as far as cards go, right? It can be used in a positive sense to get rid of junk cards so that they get out of circulation and you don't have to draw them anymore. And so we see less hands like this and more hands like this. But it can also be used in a negative sense. Oftentimes, supervillains, it's usually supervillains, will come out with here we go. Supervillains will come out with a first appearance attack, such as Black Manta's. It says each player discards the top card of his deck. Right. So let's stack that real fast and game it out, assuming you can't defend. Right. So let's say Black Manta attacks. In this case, he says, if you discarded a card with cost 1 or more, choose one. Destroy it or discard your hand. This costs 0, so I would be exempt. But let's say that instead of that, he actually discarded this. This one does cost 1 or greater, so he attempts to destroy it. But I have the opportunity to just discard my hand, thus foregoing my turn and needing to pass, or I can destroy it. So this is actually a good card. It's not a great one, but it's still worth something, right? You don't want it to get destroyed unless you have like almost nothing but amazing cards, at which point, okay, maybe you would want less of this and more of those. But typically, supervillains will attempt to destroy cards you actually like or want to keep. And so in that case, destruction is a punishment because that card is no longer in your possession. It lowers your score and your future power. But cards that allow you to destroy include such ones as Heat Vision, right? That's a particularly coveted card in DC1, as it gives you 3 power, which is, definitely good for an average card, or it's a good average to shoot for. And it says you may destroy a card in your hand or discard pile, right? So it's giving you the option, right? First of all, it's giving the option to destroy. It's not mandatory that you have to destroy. And it allows you to choose your hand. In this case, I have punches, right? So I might actually want to play them this turn, even though it's good to get rid of them as fast as possible, usually, unless you have a card that actually powers up with punches. But since I have a discard pile, it'd be better to choose from there because that's not going to lower my power for this turn, right? I could destroy them here. But also, I would probably want to get rid of the vulnerabilities as they give 0 first. And so, destruction cards are typically quite coveted. But do keep in mind, do make sure to pay attention to how they work. For example, nth metal, as we looked at a moment ago, it says, look at the top card of your deck. You may destroy it. This is typically more useful just for the looking at the top card of the deck rather than the actual destruction. But if you get it early on, it's incredibly helpful because most of your cards will be junk cards. Later on, it's more of a bit of luck, right? So let's say if I just look at the top card, what did it happen to be? See, it was another nth metal. I don't really want to destroy that, especially if I had Batman, which was what I started the video with, right? See, because in his case, this would actually give you 2 power as opposed to 1. But even then, again, it's with 1 VP. You typically don't want to get rid of that unless you're very confident that you're ahead in the score. So yeah, even though this card is a destroyer, it's less reliable. So just make sure you pay attention to what the text does. But that, I think, is the beauty of this game, is a lot of how this game works. And it varies from expansion to expansion. And typically, a lot of the expansions do introduce new concepts and keywords and such that you actually do have to remember the rules for. But for the most part, as long as you know how a turn works, right? Again, that's, you may or may not play any or all the cards in your hand, but when you end your turn, you discard all the cards you played and all the cards still in your hand, and then you draw 5, right? Unless you have a character who has the ability to draw more in between turns. You draw 5, right? As long as you keep in mind that, and also discard piles are public domain, right? It doesn't mean anyone can just take from them, but anyone is allowed to know what's in a discard pile. So, be polite and ask your fellow players what's in theirs, so you can gauge what may or may not be in their hand or their deck. Or simply, if you can, if you need to reference something from their discard pile, such as the broadsword, which is an attack in Forever Evil, which attempts to destroy a small card in an opponent's discard pile. As I was saying, you don't have to memorize too many different terms, right? Just power, which is, referred to as the currency, which is what you need to buy the cards based off their cost, right? So 1, 2, 3 power. This costs 3. I could get this, or this, or this. Right now, as long as you know power and then attacks and defenses, and you know that when someone takes a supervillain in between turns, the next supervillain appears, and then their first appearance attack occurs, which can also be defended if you have a defense. As long as you know those handful of things, and also that the bar in the middle, right? Villain, hero, equipment, starter, superpower, location. If I knew where one was, those are very rare and very valuable. Those are the card types, not supervillain and not weakness, right? Those are not card types. Of all the, weakness having nothing in the type bar, and supervillain just indicating that this is supposed to be on the stack rather than in the main deck. Normally, there are alternate modes that you might want to play in which they would appear in the main deck. As long as you know those keywords, most of the game it kind of programs itself, right? As long as you read the text in the card and follow the instructions on each one, right? Basic power cards just give you power. Okay, like Power Ring, for example, right? It has 3, kind of 3 sentences on it, or not full sentences. It basically has 3 lines on it, but you just follow the instructions, right? You play it. The first one says reveal the top card of your deck. If its cost is 1 or greater, plus 3 power. It was not. Otherwise, plus 2 power. Right, so it's not so Power Ring, there are no like keywords again other than power, but it tells you how it works, right? It's more complex card. Oh, or like here, Suicide Squad, right? That's a lot of text, right? But you just look at it. You're at the top, it says plus 2 power. That's what happens when you play it every time, right? So that's the easiest part. The next sentence, if you have already played 2 other Suicide Squad cards this turn, each foe discards his hand, right? That's an instruction, basically, that would say, that tells you how this card works in the context of if you'd already played more of it. But basically it's explaining how it works. And then the last line says, at the end of the game, this card is worth 1 VP for each Suicide Squad in your deck, right? So so it's a little wordier, but it still explains exactly how this works, right? Like this last line could just as easily have the bolded words squad card, and then you have to reference the rules and say, oh, that's what that means. It means you have multiple of it. It has a multiple of its score, but no, it tells you, and all you have to do is read to figure out. Right. Also keep in mind that when you're just when your deck is empty, your discard pile should be full. Right. That doesn't mean you have to reshuffle immediately. You reshuffle when it's time to interact with when you need to draw, look at, or whatever a card in your deck, and you have no deck. That's the instant that you reshuffle, and you no longer have a discard pile, and now you have a deck. Right. Actually, or if you get attacked, then I want to defend. It says you may discard this card to avoid an attack. If you do, draw 2 cards. Now notice the order that it says, right? I wouldn't defend, then draw the 2 cards, then discard. No, it says to discard it first and then draw 2 cards. I don't know. I feel like maybe this hasn't been a very good explanation. It's been kind of going all over the place. I'll just keep... actually, let me throw a note down. Okay, remember, now, when your turn is over, play passes to the left. In other words, the turn order is clockwise around the table, unless you're playing a team-based game, at which point, you would alternate, a player from one team, a player from the other team, the other player from the first team, the other player from the second team. Other than that, it will go clockwise, so just keep in mind the turn order. I will restart. All right, so again, I have no, this is just a demonstration. There are no other players right now, so I'll just be playing a few turns solo to demonstrate how a turn works. So remember, everyone starts out with a starter deck of 10 cards, 7 punch, or their equivalent, 3 vulnerabilities, or their equivalent in other installments. Mind your superhero ability, right? So this time I'm going to play Wonder Woman. She says, for each villain you buy or gain during your turn, draw an extra card at the end of your turn. So that's referencing how at the end of your turn you discard all the cards that you played and all the cards that are still in your hand, and then draw 5 more. In her case, when you buy or gain villains on a turn, in between between that and the next turn, you're going to get 1 more each. So I don't have any other opponents. I'm just playing to demonstrate a turn order. I'm going to play 4 punch. That means I have a total of 4 power. Now, there are no cards that cost 4, but I can get ones that are less, right? I can get either of these 3s, right? So we have the kick stack off to the side. It's not part of the lineup, but it's available at any time as long as they're there. There are 16 of them. You can't buy weaknesses at will, not that you typically want to. Or I could get Two-Face because he's a villain, right? Or because I would be trying to prevent there from being a 2-cost card in the lineup, as 2-cost cards help rack up a little extra score. I'm going to get the Penguin. When you buy or gain a card, it goes to your discard pile, usually. And then I have 1 power left over, but I can't get anything with that, so I'm going to end my turn. And then a card comes out of the lineup, and I will draw 6 cards. Now, there were only 5 cards left in my deck, so I need to get another one. In that instant, you reshuffle your discard pile, and it becomes the deck. Your deck. Right, so now I have 6 cards in my hand. And with that, I will play 4 punches again to give me 4 power. Again, there's still nothing for 4. So I have a choice. Do I want to get Kick because it gives 2 power? Or do I want to get Two-Face because he's a villain? It will trip the ability. I'm going to go ahead and get Two-Face this time. And I will end my turn. So once again, I'll be drawing 6 cards. 3, 4. And once again, we need to shuffle up because that put me at 1 more than was left in my deck. Okay. Now this is the hand we have to play with. Aha. Now I'm going to play the Penguin. He says, draw 2 cards, then choose and discard 2 cards from your hand, which I will do. Draw 2 cards. Now you'll notice how I have a bunch of vulnerabilities here. We don't want those. Let's go ahead and discard those. You can be particularly helpful dealing with these situations. And once again, however... Oh, I forgot to pull a card out of the lineup. Once again, however, we have 4 punch and there's nothing left, so let's go ahead and get that Kick now. And I'm going to end my turn, but this time I will only draw 5 cards because I did not get a villain. I got a superpower. And she only references, Wonder Woman only is looking for a villain. That doesn't mean you only have to get villains, but that means that's the only one that'll cause her ability to work. Okay, so let's take a look. I'm going to play Two-Face, and it says choose even or odd, then reveal the top card of your deck. If its cost matches your choice, let me say even, because I know I have a lot of abilities, so I'll go ahead and draw that card. Now, that doesn't help me this turn, but it helps me next turn, because that's 1 less vulnerability waiting for me in the deck. So I'm going to hang on to that and be happy about it. Then I play 4 more punch. That brings me up to 5. Okay, so here we have a couple choices. Gorilla Grodd is a fairly strong card, and he's also worth 2 victory points. And he's a villain, so he'll work with Wonder Woman. This would be a really good idea. Titan's Tower, however, is a location. Those are exceedingly rare cards that typically behave almost as if they're another superhero, right? So that'd be as if I had Wonder Woman and then, like, another character on top of that. So, then there's the Bat Signal. Now, if I had a lot of hero cards, this would be a helpful one because in its game text, it references hero cards. I think I'm going to get Well, you see, now we have to see. Now you got to think about what your opponents might do, or what's more, what might help you more, or So you got to make that decision. You got to make that calculation. I'm going to go ahead and use Titan's Tower because locations, especially in DC1 of the original, are extremely valuable, and there's nothing that can stop them. So let's do that. Once again, I'm going to draw 5 cards because it's a typical turn. I did not get a villain, right? Let's flip up another card. There's Power Ring. Okay. Now I'm going to play the Penguin, draw 2 cards, then choose and discard 2 cards from my hand. Once again, the vulnerabilities. Now I'm left with only cards that give me power. Notice how my deck is empty, but I don't need to do anything with it yet, so we're going to leave it be. I'm going to play Kick and 3 Punches for a total of 5 power. Now I want to get Gorilla Grodd. Right? I'm going to end my turn. All the cards that got played. Yeah. Right, let's flip up another card from the lineup. And I'm going to draw 6 cards because I bought a villain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You don't have to shuffle exactly that long. Sometimes I'll shuffle while my opponents are taking their turns. If it's necessary. Okay, so now we're going to see. Now you can see that the deck's been getting bigger and better, right? Now we have a card that's almost all good. Right, that's why it's called a deck building game, because the cards that you buy or gain go into your collection. You don't get them right away, but you get them down the line until eventually you're getting nothing but good things, hopefully, right? And you got to try and interrupt your opponents as well. I haven't seen any attacks this round, but that would be how you do it. Typically, there are other ways too, like pass cards. We're going to play the Penguin, draw 2 cards, then choose and discard 2 cards from my hand. Uh-oh. I only have 1 vulnerability, but we know that's one we're going to discard. As for the rest, it's basically got to be Punch. But that's still an improvement over the hand I just had a moment ago. It's just, well, hypothetically, if I'd had nothing but good cards, playing the Penguin would cause you to have to choose, and maybe, let's say I had like all kicks instead of punches and vulnerabilities. Then I would have to discard 2 kicks, but hopefully, in the process, I drew a Gorilla Grodd. Hypothetically, let's play Gorilla Grodd plus 3 power, Kick plus 2, and 3 Punches plus 1 each. That's 8. Now we have some choices. The supervillain costs 8, and he'd be worth the most victory points. However, this card over here, Man of Steel, is an exceedingly rare and exceedingly powerful card that could basically guarantee me an early victory. See the supervillain here, Al Ghul, right? If I get him, right, then in between turns, the next supervillain would appear and attack. I'm probably not ready for that. So I got to decide if I want to get him, or keep looking around. Blue Beetle is not as strong as Man of Steel, but he's another very rare and powerful card. In his case, he's a defense. With this defense, I could protect myself from supervillains or my opponents with their attacks quite easily. And he's still worth 2 VP, so it's not a total waste. On the other hand, Bulletproof is a defense, and it only costs 4. That would leave me with 4 power left over, at which point I could get another Kick, or I could get Power Ring. So the choice is mine. I think I would probably want to get Man of Steel in this case. But that could turn out to be wrong. For all I know, the next supervillain could actually be one who destroys heroes, and I could be stuck with Man of Steel in my hand, at which point my investment would have really screwed me. At which point, if I'd gotten Blue Beetle instead, he would just shrug it off, and then I'd be sitting pretty. Someone else might have gotten Man of Steel, but at least I'd still be in the race. Okay, here we go. I got Titan's Tower. That's a location. When you play it, it stays in play. Right, so now that's right. So that's what we refer to as an ongoing card. It has the word ongoing in bold. Now, these early cards also have this explanation here. So to be fair, that thing I said where the cards explain themselves, the later ongoing cards, including locations, do not have this little instructional line. They just have ongoing as included in the instruction booklet to explain how that works. Okay, but this says, when you play your first card with cost 2 or 3 on each of your turns, draw a card. Well, would you look at that? I have Two-Face, but here's the catch. So Two-Face has an effect. We have to deal with this before we get to this. So he says, choose even or odd. I'm going to say odd this time. Let's reveal the top card of that deck. It was a punch, so this gets discarded. It'd have been better if I'd drawn it, but whatever. But now that we finished what Two-Face has to say, right, we finished this card, now we're back out of the card, and then now the location gets activated. Because this card costs 2. That was my first card that it cost 2 this turn, so I will draw a card. And it is a vulnerability, so not great, but again, better now than next turn. Although it will still end up in the deck, so it's not really that much better. Let's play 2 punch. That brings me up to 3 power, and I'm going to go ahead and get power. No, Harley Quinn, because she's a villain, and we want to activate that. We want to activate Wonder Woman's ability. Now we'll go ahead and draw an extra card again. I think you should be able to see how a turn goes, although typically you wouldn't just keep going. You'd go, then the person to your left, i.e. in a clockwise fashion, would go until it was your turn again. So these cards in the lineup would, be disappearing one by one, but then that also means that new ones would be flipping up in between the turns, and that's sort of the cycle of the game. Oh, one more because I bought a villain. Oh, and we drew her. Okay. Now, so again, you don't have to reorder your cards as soon as you draw them. That's just a thing I do to help me figure out what I'm doing. Sometimes I'll put my defenses up front so that I can ready myself for an opponent's attacks. In this case, I have a choice. I can play kick or, well, I could play punches first if I want, but I typically want to, hide my strength until the time is right. Because I have this location, it can be activated with either kick or Harley Quinn. I'm going to do kick first to try and keep it simple, right? Keep this function separate and draw a card for Titan's Tower. Oh, we got Man of Steel. He's particularly powerful, but only his first effect will work right now. Let's hold off on him because we might want to activate his secondary effect, which I'll explain in a moment. Then I'm going to play Harley Quinn. Now she's only good for 1 power, but she has an attack. So if we had other players, they would have to be subject to the following. Each foe puts a punch or vulnerability from his discard pile on top of his deck. It says his, but it means his, her, they. They're just using the his. They're just doing the pronoun doesn't matter, right? They're just doing that to simplify. Later installments do use gender neutral pronoun, but you don't have to be male to play this game. Although if any of my opponents did not have a discard pile, she would be functionless. She would not do anything to them, but they would still have the opportunity to defend, right? I launched an attack, so if someone else had a card like Bulletproof, then they would be able to follow the text on his defense. As you may discard this card to avoid an attack. If you do, well, we'll get to that. But, just so you know, when you attack, and also pay attention to whom is or is not attacked, right? So this says each foe. All the attacks in this deck say each foe. Many installments have attacks that only impact one person. It'll tell you to choose a foe, sometimes one or more foes, right? At which point, only that one person would be subject. So we have that. And then I play 3 more punch. So what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 power. Okay, so now Man of Steel says +3 power, put all superpowers from your discard pile into your hand. Again, you don't have to play everything right away. If I did, I might be, maybe this is what I want to do, because this would put me up to 9 power. I'd be able to get Ra's al Ghul or Blue Beetle Empowering. But let's hang on to that because, right, so we have 6 power. Let's buy Bulletproof. Now that puts me down to 2. Now again, this is not an official thing, but I do this to help me visualize, and so I don't have to have like a piece of paper here or remember that I have already reduced some of my power, right? Because this is not a computer game. Unlike Shards and Ruby, the deck builders, the power will not automatically calculate for you. You have to actually pay attention. But I do this as a visual tool to keep track of my power. It doesn't always work because sometimes I'll have like all 2s, but then I lose an odd number of power. But you could just pay some attention. Anyways, Because now there's a superpower in my discard pile, if I play Man of Steel now, it says put all superpowers, such as this one, back into your hand. And look, I can play it on the same turn. So now I'm up to 7 power. Bulletproof had 2 power. So I'm up to 7 power, and I still got an extra card out of that, right? So that's not enough to get Ra's al Ghul, but it is enough to get Blue Beetle. Or if I wanted to keep playing Wonder Woman, I'm going to get Bane, and then with, right, so he cost 4, 7 minus 4 equals 3. Let's also get the Powering, because that's a pretty good card. And now I'll end my turn. You see, Man of Steel was a good investment, and he only gets better as long as you have a discard pile. Okay, now I got a villain. I bought a villain that turn, so I will draw 1 extra card. Okay, so this turn, not so hot, but still a lot better than the ones we started out with. Let's play Gorilla Grodd, plus 3 power and 3 punch. Uh-oh, I don't have a 2 or a 3, right? He costs 5, these are zeros. So the Titan's Tower just lays dormant for this turn. With 6 power, Blue Beetle is good, but I think I'm going to have to go with Heat Vision because it has the Destroyer function, right? That'll help me, every time I play it, usually, as long as one of these are around, then I'll be able to get rid of cards, take them out of circulation. So then I'm only left with the good ones. Alternately, of course, if I had weakness cards, right, which would be added from opponent or supervillain attacks, I'd want to get rid of these too. So a Destroyer helps with that. So I'm going to get Heat Vision and end my turn. Now, okay, these were there. Once again, okay, now this time I did not get a villain, so we're only going to draw 5 cards. Hey, it's another Bulletproof. So yeah, not every single card is unique, except in the Cartoon Network deck building game. And probably the other one of it. Right, there are multiples of many cards. In the original, right, in DC1, most villains and heroes have a double, and most superpowers and equipment have a triple. Okay, so once again, the order of your cards might matter. I have the Penguin and Two-Face. Right, do I want to start with the Penguin, draw 2 cards, and then discard 2 cards, or do I want to start with Two-Face, draw a card, hopefully that, hoping to get, say, a vulnerability so that when I play the Penguin, I have the opportunity to get another good card. I'm going to start with Two-Face. He says, okay, I will choose even. Let's reveal the top card of the deck. It was Punch. That's a 0. It's even. I'll draw it. But then Titan's Tower activates. Yeah, sorry, I forgot whether or not I got a villain last turn. Titan's Tower activates because that card costs 2 or 3, and I'll draw another card. Okay. We got a better spread. I'm going to play the Penguin now, right? And so, by the way, again, this is not, this is just my thing. Notice how I play the cards with power on one side and the cards without power off to the side, right? As a visual so we know I've played this card, but it does not give me any power right now. Now he says draw 2 cards, then choose and discard 2 cards from my hand, right? Okay, so now I got Kick and Bulletproof. Let's dump these punches. Now, he also cost 3. He could have activated Titan's Tower, but it already went off this turn, so we're not going to do that again. Then I play Gorilla Grodd, plus 3 power, Kick and Bulletproof, each for 2, and 2 punches, each for 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of good opportunities in here, in the lineup. I think really Bulletproof and Blue Beetle is the best investment. But I'm going to go ahead and, right, so if I was playing for real, that's what I would get right now. For demonstrative purposes, I want to get Ra's al Ghul to help, so we can show what happens when you get the supervillain. So he'll go into my discard pile just like any other card. I have 2 power left over, nothing can get for it. So I'm going to have to end my turn. Right? Now, he was a villain, so Wonder Woman does activate, right? In Forever Evil, Lex Luthor has the opposite ability, right? He says for every hero you buy or gain, and your opponents are all heroes, so he does the same thing in this case. So I got 6 cards here. There's no defense, so I'm going to have to be subject to whatever happens next. Let's reveal Black Manta. First appearance attack. Each player discards the top card of his deck. I can't defend, so I get hit with that. Uh-oh. It says, if you discarded a card with the cost of 1 or more, choose one. Destroy it or discard your hand. So now I have a choice, right? I got to make a calculation. Is it worth losing my turn? I've got Man of Steel and Power Ring, so I'm going to say no, right? Bane, right? Bane is an okay card, right? If I had a lot of opponents, it might be a little bit better, but still, he's only worth. He only gives you one victory point. He only gives you 2 power. His attack is not particularly punishing. It can be annoying, but not particularly. And he only costs 4, right? Not only that, but see, Wonder Woman's ability doesn't activate when you play a villain. It activates when you buy or gain one. So I already got her bonus from him. I'm going to go ahead and destroy him, right? So he's going to go into the destroyed pile, which in my case is usually just a little like, I would often use the lid of the box that the game came in, just, turned over. But basically, so the card isn't technically out of the game, but it's out of everyone's possession, right? And there's nothing in this installment that references it, but some installments and expansions do allow you to reach into the the destroyed pile. But for now, it's just gone. And then whoever's turn is next, it would happen. Okay, let's take a look. What have I got? I have Power Ring and Man of Steel. I'm going to start with Power Ring again, because with Man of Steel, I might want to get a superpower first and then add that to my next turn. But I'm also going to reorder my discard pile. The order of your discard pile does not matter, right? It's meant to be shuffled, but it's also meant to be looked at, right? I'm going to put my superpowers at the top to help me sort that out. Let's start with Power Ring, however. It says reveal the top card of your deck. It was a vulnerability. So it says if its cost is 1 or greater, it wasn't. Otherwise, +2 power. So it's going to give me +2 power. But then Titan's Tower activates and I draw this card. Okay, not great, but again, better now than on the next turn. Although, I don't know, we'll see if I'm one short. Let's do some quick math. If I were to play Man of Steel, okay, so first I have 2 power right now. If I were to play these 3 punches, I'd be up to 5. I play Man of Steel, that put me up to 8, and then I get the superpowers back into my hand, and I can play them the same turn. That would give me 10 and 12. That would be enough to get Black Manta and Bulletproof. But if I do things a little bit differently, right? Like let's say I play 2 punch, and then I buy Bulletproof, right? I'm gonna be 2 down from where I was, but right, okay, so all this power got used up. But let's say I play Man of Steel, but now I put 2 Bulletproofs back into my hand as well as a kick, and then I'm gonna play them too. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Punch 10. So again, so there were no 2s in the lineup, which means that effectively I would have had the same turn pursuing that. But let's go ahead and get Black Manta now. And if there was a 2, then this would have been a good move, because then I would have gotten Bulletproof and the supervillain and another card there. But that didn't happen this turn. So let's go ahead and end that turn. Up next is Solomon Grundy. Let's look at the Joker. No, actually, no, we can demonstrate. Now the Joker has an effect that's supposed... Oh, I took a supervillain, so let's draw an extra card. He says, first appearance attack. Each player puts a card from his hand into the discard pile of the player on his left. The rules point out that, the disambiguation page of the rules point out that you ignore players who defend this, right? So since I'm playing alone, let's just assume that I'm the only one who could... No, actually, I'm sorry. I do have a defense right here. Oh, but given the situation, I might actually not want to defend. So let's say that everyone else has defended so far. He says, put a card... Okay, so instead of the player on my left, I would just be putting a card into my own discard pile. And then it says, if it has a cost of 1 or greater, put a weakness on top of your deck, right? So I have a vulnerability here. It would be perfectly fine if I just went ahead and discarded that, right? Otherwise I could defend with Bulletproof, but see, it says you may discard this card to avoid an attack. If you do, draw a card, and then you may destroy a card in your discard pile. But then at this point, the only card in my discard pile is the Bulletproof, and I don't want to do that. Now, you don't have to destroy it, but it doesn't help me either. It'd be better if I just held on to Bulletproof in case someone else wants to attack, or someone else gets the supervillain, then we have to deal with whoever's next. And so I judge that this attack will be inept, so I will go ahead and voluntarily take the hit and discard vulnerability. Let's take a look. Okay, I play Ra's al Ghul. Now he says +3 power, and at the end of your turn, put this card on the bottom of its owner's deck before drawing a new hand. The reason it says its owner instead of your is in the event that you have a card such as X-ray vision, which allows you to play someone else's card. Okay, so we're there so far. I play Kick, right? +2 power, so I'm at 5, and then this costs 3, so Titan's Tower will activate and I'll draw another card. Let's play Heat Vision. You may destroy a card in your hand or discard pile. Vulnerability is out, right? So this time I destroyed an unwanted card. So now I only have 2 vulnerabilities left in the deck, which means which dramatically lowers the chance that I get it, that I get a turn that has a bunch of nothing cards. On the other hand, that also means that if the Joker would or someone similar were to attack again, I might not have an easy out. Right? They might actually be punishing. I play Harley Quinn, and we'll just skip the attack for now. She has 1 power. And then I play 2 bulletproofs. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, here we go. I'm going to get the Joker and Poison Ivy. Now that's 2 villains, which means that... Oh, hold on. Ra's al Ghul. At the end of your turn, put this card on the bottom of its owner's deck. Yeah. Now, I just bought 2 villains, which means that my next hand is going to have 7 cards. Yeah, 5 plus 2. Once again, we have some high power cards mixed in with a bunch of starters. I need to destroy more, don't I? Lex Luthor. First appearance attack. Each player gains a weakness for each villain in the lineup. There's 1. I can't defend, so now I've got a junk card. Oh, would you look at that? I went down a vulnerability, I went up a weakness. Only now my score is lower because a weakness actually lowers your score. Oh, good, I'm still recording. Okay, let's take a look. This time, I think I want to play Man of Steel first. Put all superpowers into my hand because I don't have a 2 or 3. But look how great that got. Now, let's play Heat Vision to destroy that weakness. We neutralized the threat right away. Now, let's play Kick. This is the first card I played that has a cost of 3 or 2. Now I'll draw a card for Titan's Tower. Okay, we got a pretty big hand now, so this is going to be an amazing play. That's why Man of Steel cost 8. Way better that I got him before someone else, hypothetically, instead of getting Ra's al Ghul first. So let's play 2 bulletproofs again. Gorilla Grodd +3 power and 4 punches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Wow. So let's get Lex Luthor. I have 9 power left over. Solomon Grundy. I have 3 power left over. And Mira. Okay, so the game would continue in this fashion, of course, with other players playing too, at least one other person, until one or 2 things happens, right? Either the supervillain stack runs out, which is more likely, but again, they're more expensive, and every time you get one, the next one will attack everyone. Most of the time. There are a few exceptions, right? So if in between turns, there are no more supervillains left, then the game will end. Alternatively, if in between turns, there are no more cards left in the main deck and you can't get a lineup of 5 cards, the game will also end. And the goal of the game is to end with the most victory points, as is indicated by the number in the star in the lower left corner of a card. Right? All the cards that are in your deck and your hand and ongoing and your discard pile are yours. At which point you would add up the scores. Let's just say I got a couple weaknesses hypothetically. So clear away, anything. Anything not claimed doesn't belong to anyone, right? Anything destroyed doesn't belong to anyone, right? Then I would sort out the cards and count up the victory points. I like to sort out this is just hypothetical, because the ending deck wouldn't look like this. I just grabbed cards randomly, right? So set aside the zeros, I put the ones with the ones. If I had any asterisk value cards, I'd put those together, and then after I sort out the cards, I would check what each asterisk is looking for, because it tells you what gives it its score, and then I would be able to calculate from there. The weaknesses are -1. You set aside the zeros for now. But remember, these are still in your deck, right? These aren't, you don't just like toss them right away. You know, you do have to pay attention. In some cases, you will have to pay attention to how many starters you have. Because there's one card that counts how many cards are in your deck in total. And it doesn't matter which ones they are, even if they're zeros. And there's another card that specifically counts your starters. And there are a couple more like this, you know, in the same vein. And to count things quicker, I put cards into chunks of 10, right? So we have 2 5s, so that's an easy one. We have 2 4s here. So I will pair that with a 2 to make another 10. And we have a 3 and 2 2s. That makes 7, so let's grab 3 1s. But since we have these weaknesses, which are -1 each, let's go ahead and grab 2 more 1s and then put that into a stack. So I've counted for the weaknesses, but still made a stack of 10. And then I have 5 left over, so I just hang on to that, and then I count my other stacks. I got 3, so 35. Again, I just kind of grab cards randomly. That's just for demonstrative purposes. But that should let you know how to play the game, and how the game ends, and what the goal of the game is.